Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. What happened to you was not your fault. But we talk about recovery being your responsibility. You just laid out the blueprint of what that looks like and the freedom that we achieve when we go through the recovery and our person meets our purpose. On today's episode, we have an amazing business owner here, Olivia Atkin, who is, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to delve into everything and just have a very open and authentic conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the reasons I'm so excited is because when you meet someone with amazing, incredible, positive energy, it's like and almost an explosion happens, of just positive energy going on. But to Olivia's credits, she is the creator of the podcast Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. She also TEDx speaker of Defeating Your Biggest Enemy, You. That got me there. That drew me all the way in. And then she's also the author of Achieving Success in Career Development and the founder and owner of Achieving Success LLC. Oh my goodness, what amazing accomplishments. And that doesn't even scratch the surface. So I'm going to bounce the ball over to you and just give us a little bit more about, anything that you want to share.
Well, that was a great intro. And I think for me, as you mentioned in a lot of the titles and things I've created, achieving success is woven into everything I talk about. And it's really not because I'm telling people what success should look like and the steps to get there. And if you don't take this path, then you're on the wrong path. But achieving success, it's really woven in the aspect of we're all working to achieve those goals. They can look different. Success can look different and honestly should look different in different times in our lives, and both personally and professionally. So a lot of what I do speak about is really not just this idea of achieving success and your state of what that looks like now, but the journey of it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we dive too deep into the discussion today, just want to ask you, what does Get Trauma Informed mean to you?
It means a few different things. One, it means we're transparent with those things that are triggers, why they might be triggers for us, and understanding that something that one individual does not look at as a trauma and it, might not have experienced that thing does not mean that for someone else it isn't a trauma, that they don't have causes that make them think a different way, cause them to react a different way, and that everyone's blueprint to this world is different. And we have to take the time to understand why those blueprints are different. So it's not just learning about different traumas and different triggers and what that can look like from the standpoint of maybe a therapist or psychologist and working through that. But it's also on the other end of the spectrum of having the conversations around, two individuals who might be going through similar traumas, but even how you can show up in the proper way for other individuals.
Absolutely. And that's so important. And I love what you said about the triggers as well, because sometimes people take that lightly and then it leads into, well, quite frankly, a disaster because you don't really understand how somebody else is wired or how they're functioning, and based on their experience, how they actually show up. So I think it's so important. And that's what we're doing with the Get Trauma Informed movement, is to help people to become aware, because oftentimes we can offend somebody just because we don't know. And so I think it's just important for us to build those healthy relationships, but, to actually just really understand what this trauma movement is all about.
And it could also be too, again, how we show up. You really hit that on the nail on the head there because, it can hit us in waves and it can do different things to how we react to situations or even how our brain, like certain things can end up making us feel sick or get migraines because it stresses us out. Not because the task might be stressful, the environment we're in is an overload.
That is so important. That and oftentimes we suppress some of the traumas and things that are happened to us, and then we suppress it, and then somebody else, maybe even in a workplace, or even maybe in a grocery store, somebody else, does something to again trigger us or cross our path in a way that we just feel anxiety, or we just start to feel these things, and then all of a sudden there's an explosion of negativity because we did not address those traumas. We just buried it. And then we even sometimes will say, why did I do that? Or why did that bother me so bad? But that's why
Mhm.
it's so important that, like you just said, about being transparent, about seeking the help. And I think taking the shame off of when something has happened. One of my taglines is trauma was not your fault. However, recovery is your responsibility. So that is our responsibility to become aware of the different traumas and then actually know how it affected us. As I've been walking through the Get Trauma Informed movement and podcast, I've uncovered some additional trauma that I didn't even know was there, or did not even know that that was a trauma.
And the other aspect of it, and I'm going to kind of flip this a little bit, is it doesn't always have to stem in more of a negative tone or way. Take a loss, right? And I actually just saw this clip the other night, so it fits with what we're talking about now. And no matter how you feel about this individual, I think it just shows how trauma can hit us. Kim Kardashian, who lost her father to cancer many, many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
the houses, I guess doll houses from what I saw in the video, her sister brought out for an event they were doing. And she's like walking and she's like, oh my God. And she's with her oldest daughter, North. Like me and mommy, meaning Kris Jenner,
Mm-hmm.
made these. And then all of a sudden, you see in her face, like it kind of, she's keeping her composure. She's just saying it. She goes, this means so much to me. And as she starts to say those words,
Mm-hmm.
she starts bawling. And you see it
Mm.
in the video of like, she's like, you have no idea how much this means to me. Like, dad worked on this and we did this. And it's a quick video, but it's something that you can see the pain of that loss and the closeness of her father
Yes.
shine through in the aspect of it's literally seeing something her mom, her, and her father worked on, you know, 30 years ago, plus probably. And the second she sees it and she's telling others about it, she goes from this, put together woman, right? Who, I mean,
Right.
Kim Kardashian has built her empire and she is known for that. And we could all disagree or agree on things in Kim Kardashian world. But it just shows that no matter how strong you are, a loss, it's not, it is a negative, but that doesn't mean you've trauma that will shine negatively in other areas. But
Yeah.
it's something that even all these years later, she hasn't fully healed from. And such a positive memory. It's just like you can become sad in a moment like that and just so emotional that even as you're knowing you're being filmed and like, okay, I gotta keep my composure, you can't help yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it sounds like it just took her back to that moment, and you actually, go back to that feeling of how you felt as a little girl with your mom, with your dad. So I think that's really important to understand. Like you said, it doesn't always have to trigger you negative. It can also, be in that positive, that warm feeling. There was so now how has trauma empowered and inspired you?
So for me, I think my first sense of trauma and you and I have talked about this, is actually when I was diagnosed at a young age with epilepsy. And I went from, at the time, I would say that, it was a real life shift and not something that I would necessarily look at as trauma, but I built an armor because of it, of going, okay, you're going to tell me I'm not going to live a normal life likely after the next 8 months, that this and that, as I'm getting bullied. And, because at 9 years old, there's a rare medical conditioning happen to you, but other 9-year-olds don't know about. Most people don't understand epilepsy, so they're trying to navigate it. And kids who don't know better and aren't taught better don't really know how to handle those situations either. And so for me, I built this armor not at the time just around some individuals and how to embrace situations, but also about how to have certain conversations and understand the willpower we all have. So for me, I support from my family and some friends, and we were all like, no, we're not going to take this diagnosis as what it is. Like, let's, try to do better and this and that. And I ended up, at the time swimming. I was training for the Junior Olympics, had to stop swimming. I graduated high school. I graduated college. I was the valedictorian. I was the commencement speaker at my university. I, have broken all of these glass ceilings over the years because and what some would look at as trauma, and ended up looking at it as that's a moment in my life. And it's a blessing because it created this armor for me to go, you think that's the only road to travel on. Now watch me create my own road to travel on, and not just travel on it, but excel on it. And I think that is ultimately how I've since then was faced with what a lot of people would look at as that life-altering trauma. There's no way to come back from it. And I took it and go, okay, how can I beat what everyone else is saying? And so now that's probably the first time I dealt with trauma, but I choose to identify those moments as the moments that I even talk about with my clients. How do you want to face the world? When you're faced with that trauma, that identifying moment, do you want that identifying moment to come at you and you rise from the ashes? Or do you want to go down in hell, right? Do you want to get buried in it? You look at it the same way you can look at leaders. When leaders and managers, a lot of times people think leaders and managers are the same thing. They're not. Just because you're a manager does not mean you're a leader. Right. And when you're given a moment in time to either help elevate yourself or elevate your team, what route are you going to go? And a true leader will sit there and go, okay, how can I rise from this situation, and how can I rise my team and the people who are standing next to me and behind me? A manager, or even an individual not in a manager's role, but can deal with the same thing and is willing to get sucked down, is the individual that goes, okay, it isn't how I now show up and I rise above this. It's look at me, feel sorry for me. All the bad choices I make are because of this moment, and you don't grow from it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine driving down the road, enjoying a beautiful day, when suddenly a tree jumps out in front of your car. Crash! In an instant, your life is flipped upside down, both physically and psychologically. That was my reality. I'm Liz Blanding, a certified holistic wellness and trauma recovery coach. In a time when, according to the National Center for PTSD, the epidemic of trauma is on the rise, 70% of adults in the U.S. have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. That's 223.4 million people who could benefit from support on their journey to recovery. To address this, I launched the Get Trauma Informed podcast in March 2024. Our podcast offers free information, resources, expert advice, and stories of those who have overcome trauma and shifted from surviving to thriving. The podcast has the capacity to reach hundreds of thousands of people. I believe that by partnering with the Get Trauma Informed podcast, we can provide critical support to many more people who need it. Trauma was not their fault, but recovery is their responsibility. And with your support, we can help them to achieve it. Thank you for considering the partnership opportunity. I look forward to the possibility of working together to make a significant impact on trauma recovery. Email us at info@oasiswellnessctrs.com or contact us at 616-320-0703. Now we will return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation. You are the absolute epitome of achieving success. And I mean, the encouragement and the inspiration that you just gave with the mindset, you talked about, you put it in your mind, I'm going to build this armor around myself and I'm going to just take off from there. And then by proving that, I love what you set as an example for our listeners, that no matter what, you said it at 9, right? And other children, they don't know how to handle it, but you did. You encapsulated yourself in this success armor and said, you know what? No matter what, I'm going to rise from this. And I think that makes the difference in your achieving success versus you just accepting what happened to you, And I'll share in my story, if I had listened to what the doctor said when I had that horrible accident, I would have had, to deal with medication for the rest of my life because they wanted to do double knee replacement surgery. And because my mind, I identify so much with you with that, because my mind said, no, there is a better way. I can do this holistically and naturally. So what I'm showing here is that it's in your mind. Your mind is so powerful. And you tell yourself whether you can, again, achieve success or whether you're going to just let the burdens just weigh you down. So I applaud you for that. And I thank you for sharing that.
Of course. And the other aspect of it, I think that is really important to understand is you might have been in the thick of it and in that self-doubt in, I'm in this situation because I'm in this situation and there's no way forward. But every day you have the choice. Just because you've been in that mindset for, 3 days, a month, 6 months, 10 years, does not mean today doesn't have to be the day where you go, okay, I'm going to take my power back. And that's a big thing of what I talk about in my TED Talk of defeating your biggest enemy, you. That even in moments of opportunity or struggle, we can be our own worst enemy. And how can you become the victor to your success story? What does that look like? And the other part, and why I specifically mentioned I mentioned through the talk, and if you listen, it's just shy of, it's like 5.5 minutes, is I chose every word in that talk very carefully. I do a lot of power poses when you use words that can be perceived as negative, right? A battle. I use the word victor. There's always that winner and loser in that struggle. But I chose every word with the conscious effort of understanding there can be a war, right? If you look at military or even yourself, there can be a massive war. And within that war, there's individual battles that you're going to face. And that's what I cover in the talk is like, I bring up in the talk 4 small battles that we can face, and how in each individual battle, you might lose one, you might win one today, that can change tomorrow. You can face the same battle and win tomorrow from the lessons you've learned today and become the victor.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. In your book, your book of Achieving Success in Career Development, can you go into a little bit about that? About, 'cause with entrepreneurship, and you have trauma, but you still have the drive and, to be an entrepreneur, to create your own legacy. What can you tell us about that?
For me, I was actually asked to write this book, and it's actually what inspired me to, from conversations I had with the publishing company, to start my podcast, which then rolled into starting my business. And when it comes to the title, again, it was very thoughtfully thought of using the word achieving success. And it was one of my favorite parts in coming up with the book was the title and doing it very thoughtfully. And so then when I thought about the book and the impact it can make, that's how I created everything else. I was like, achieving success is great. We have to really, I want to leverage this and this ideal. But the book really comes from the conversation we have around individuals, whether they're in college or 5 years in, that I've had over and over again of writing those resumes. What is the best format? What is the format you should be using? What are the words? What should be included versus not included? Your cover letters. So the book is actually a 14-chapter book that is more of a workbook style, that it will cover everything with cover letters, resumes, different professional organizations that are out there, interviewing tips. And every chapter, the longest chapter is 10 pages, and that's because it's the professional organization chapter, and there's so many out there, and I really wanted to highlight all of them and how they could benefit you. But it's like, here's why a resume is important. Here are things to think about. And then after I cover them in those sections, I give you templates. So if you're brand new and you have these experiences, this is not just how you create it, but here's a template you can look at as you're working on it. If you're in this spot in your career and you need that resume, well, here's a better resume that will actually leverage your skill sets and make you shine. And so my whole purpose was no matter where you were in your career, whether you knew certain information or not, what is the way you need to show up? And here's an easy, accessible place where you don't need to read chapter 1 through 7 to get to chapter 7. You can pick it up when you need it, turn to the page you need, and actually immediately implement those skills to practice, to use it for the one-offs, like elevator pitches. I think there's 8 different elevator pitches off the top of my head. Each one is, what might your style be? Or if you're in this situation versus this situation, this one might be better. Fill in the blank, Mad Lib style it. And I think the other aspect of it is really a lot of people aren't talking about how important it is now to even set yourself up for long-term professionally, career development wise. A lot of people, universities have gotten better at doing it, but they're not going in, and high schools aren't talking about career development for those students who might not be taking the college route and looking at all the options. Well, those individuals still need to know how to write a resume. They still need to know how to, go on an interview and things to think about. Even if you don't go to college and you go to trade school, well, you still need these skills. You need these skills that you might have not thought about them for the past 15 years, and now you're part of the mass layoffs that are happening all over the country and the world now. Well, now you need to print that resume, and that resume and what it looks like 15 years ago is a vastly different on what the expectations are now.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is sponsored by Oasis Wellness Centers, home of Soothing Salve. An organic pain relief salve infused with over 30 natural herbs. It fights inflammation, provides pain relief, relieves stiffness, relieves dry and itchy skin, and it also improves circulation. Oasis Wellness Center's mission is dedicated to relieving pain, promoting relaxation, and restoring mobility. In order to grab your jar today, contact us at www.oasiswellnessctrs.com. Now we return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation. That is so important. What it sounds like is that you have a blueprint to help those to actually go back in and say, okay, this is what I need to tweak. This is what I need to do. This is how I set myself up. Again, I say you are the epitome of achieving success. And what's so wonderful is that oftentimes when someone is as successful as you are, they don't lay out that plan. And I think it's so wonderful for you to be able to, grab your resources and say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is, I love journaling, as a matter of fact, journaling and, setting those goals up and, making sure that you set yourself up for success. Is there anything that you can share as far as like your journey to success that, that might help our listeners?
So there's a few things that I regularly do. One is like, and I even have it next to us as we're recording right now, is my planner. I have a handwritten planner. Everything personally, professionally, gets written in that planner, down to, and like I joke with my friends, but like even the aspect of like, okay, I'm gonna go spend 20 minutes and go for a walk today, or I'm going to, this is the day. As women, we all know we don't wash our hair every single day. It's not healthy for it. This is the day I'm washing my hair, so I can physically cross it off the list, and no matter how busy I get, how many balls I'm juggling in the air, I can look down and go, okay, I have too much on the plate today. Oh no, I have time for that quick call, or I need more self, me time. There's a lot of things that are happening for other people. I need to move that off today, move it to tomorrow. But it's also a way that I can easily go as those emergencies pop up, the unknowns, those things. No matter how we are as a business owner and how prepared, you have to prepare for the unknown in the day. I know what I can move, what I could look at and go, okay, this deadline isn't for a week. I can move this to tomorrow. I have that time to actually sit down. And for me, it's also understanding, and I work with a lot of business owners on this concept, that as I'm creating something for the business, a new offering, right? Or whatever it might be, there's processes and procedures I'm writing down and taking note of. As I find hiccups in what we're doing or better ways to do them, I'm writing those things down, because another misstep a lot of individuals, entrepreneurial wise, and even managers take in big organizations, is they create a task to do, or they find an improvement and no one's writing it down. So then when you can no longer do that, or you won't onboard someone to do it, they don't know how you were doing it, and there can be a step not done there because they don't know what they don't know in that. So I always create what I call, we all have seen those book, The Dummy Guide to This, or the dummies. I work with businesses and I go, okay, give me the dummies guide. And they bring me on not because I know the process and procedure, and sometimes I do, but I go in because I'm going to challenge your process and procedure. We're going to set up a timeline to actually create the process and procedure. But I'm going to sit there, and I've sat in rooms where I've been the expert in the room. And I go, I'm about to throw all of this out the window, because if I didn't actually know how to do it, I want you to tell me from the moment I have to turn on the computer or walk into a certain room, every single step I have to take, including shutting down the computer. You got to lay it all out there. So I think that's another thing that I've been able to do that not only has helped me and people I work with, but it's also helped when I don't have time to explain something and I need someone else to pick it up, or, a lot's going on. I go, I don't need to write you a 10-page paper in email format of like, this is what I need.
Right.
Some emails I even have with individuals of like, okay, what is your exposure package? What does this look like? What does that look like? I've created templates of what those, I've prepared what my potential questions could be asked for me and what is a standard response and how detailed, again, that dummy guide. Because a new client, it isn't that they're dumb in any means, but they're bringing me on to help solve the issue, maybe even take time off their plate so they can reallocate it somewhere else. So I go, here's the email and it's written up so I can copy paste it if I'm in a really busy day and tweak it where I need to tweak it. So I hope that answered your question.
No. I love it. Thank you for the details because you actually mapped that piece out, and how it relates back to the get trauma informed portion is because you talked about mapping out everything in your planner. And I carry a planner every single day. I look at it first thing in the morning and then before I go to bed at night and in between the day, because it's sort of like your personal compass to help you understand. And then you pointed out a great point. When you're looking at that, you can see where you're not giving yourself the time to do your self-care, like, to incorporate all of the things that we lay out, like how important it is to meditate, how important it is to take that quiet time away from everything, even maybe go for a walk outside to get some vitamin D, to even have a phone call that's not business related, because as entrepreneurs, we throw ourselves all the way in, right? We dive in like 100% of ourselves, and then other things come up and we get overwhelmed. So that's why it's important to have that self-care, but to incorporate your self-care into your planner so that, wait, I do need time to wash my hair. I do need time to, do those things that you need to do for yourself. So I think those are excellent points. Is there anything else that you can add to the trauma informed movement or conversation to help somebody that might just be in the recovery process, or even in the process of, what, I do think, I do feel overwhelmed, how do I, what do I do to realign or readjust myself?
So I think that goes on two different pathways, and I want to talk and touch upon both. So for that individual who is still working through things, one of the biggest things that I think can help is getting comfortable with telling your story and really how things affect you. And also, while you're doing that, not just give grace to others for maybe what they're going through, and I think we all could give more grace to individuals, but also it's a line between grace and accountability for ourselves and others, right? So you cannot blame someone for treating you a certain way during your recovery process if you haven't shared how their actions are actually affecting you, or why you're showing up and you've now gotten them upset for them to then react back to you. Is like, okay, have that conversation, hold yourself accountable for the actions. Again, hold that person accountable. You're not writing them the open, check to go spend as much money as you want kind of thing.
Yes.
You got to hold some accountability. And if they keep doing it and it's unhealthy for you, then go, okay, no. But when someone's telling you or reacting to something, you have to step back and go, okay, why are they reacting in this way? And when you're reacting, I think I was just having a conversation with someone about this. Is there was an issue that was going on in their family for past few months, and they came to me to talk to me and get my thoughts on it. And I was like, the issue is no one wants to effectively communicate. We're all the victim, and no one's saying that you're not, everyone else hasn't been affected. But are you truly the victim in this, or are you trying to take that experience away from the real person that was triggered by this, the real person that was affected by this and was put towards this, and then everyone else had the aftermath? Actually have the conversation on why you think you're the victim. Maybe there was something else someone else did, and that's why they think they're the victim and not you being the victim. Have the conversation on why what is the path forward, especially in a family setting. Family at the end of the day is very important, right? And I'm not saying every family's perfect. Most families are far from perfect. We all have our tweaks, right? Let's be honest.
Yes, for sure.
But it's the communication style. So how do we each show up? Have that conversation. This is how I could show up today. But it's also understanding that how you show up today can very much change of how you need to show up tomorrow. What you need from someone else to be present in the moment, right? I will use this as an example. When I was starting my business, and as you know, Liz, my boyfriend serves in the U.S. Coast Guard. And all that was kind of happening around the same time. So I went from being, okay, if I put in 12 hours into working in corporate and I'll text my friends, or I could do certain things, call them on the phone while I'm doing this or that. That didn't come as feasible because my time needed to really, in that moment, be structured for other reasons. And I had a friend going through a life event. She got married to my other best friend, and I was in their wedding and we were prepping for their wedding. And I get a call and she goes, "Listen, I don't like, you're not showing up. You're not here." And I'm like, I've been here every step of the way. What do you mean? And it wasn't that I wasn't showing up for the wedding preparation. It was that our weekly phone calls that we had on, while I was traveling to work, or, traveling somewhere, or FaceTime, those had disappeared. It was more of, I was in the mix of it. I was traveling so much for work and then traveling when I wasn't working to another state, for my boyfriend, and to be able to spend that quality time while growing a business really from the ground up. And instead of getting mad at her, which my initial instinct was like, what do you mean I'm not showing up? And we laugh about now, because I was like, when it comes to planning all your events, I've done it. When it's come to helping plan your wedding, I've been there. Everything that needed me to be in another state, because they were in another state, I have been there. I've never once complained about it, even though I might have been super overwhelmed in my thought process. And I took a moment to listen, and I said, "Can you explain to me how I'm not showing up?" And she was using the premise of the wedding. But in reality, when she started explaining it, she goes, "Oh, wait, it's not about the wedding. You are showing up, but I need you to show up in this way. I'm missing our calls. Right now, those calls for, they were engaged for 2 years. For the first year, it was getting her through the week. When she was stressed, well, we're not having the calls anymore. You're not texting me casually throughout the week to fill me in on what's going on, because now you also have this other person." And I said to her, "I hear you. I validate what you're saying. I can't say that I'm not doing those things. I didn't realize that you needed me to show up and that's who you need me to be right now for you. You need me to be the person that we don't need to see each other all the time. You don't care if we see each other, but you want that like once a week check-in, whether it's a text, FaceTime call, like what does that look like?" And once we had that discussion, I then also realized, you're right. The friend you need me to be right now, I'm not showing up in that. And granted, she understood I had so much going on. And she goes, the friend I needed her to be was understanding of these different things. And we ended up having that conversation and coming to a middle ground of like, okay, the person we each need looks a little different than what it used to look like. Now we have a plan in place. So that friend you need is showing up. Then we are doing it. And like, if something changes, have that conversation. I think that's really important in a healing process, but in continuously building healthy relationships, personally and professionally, is going, I'm not happy with the way you're acting. I am not pleased being treated this way. This is the reason why, I look at this situation differently than you do, is because I went through this trauma, or I went through It doesn't even have to be a trauma, a specific situation, and it has now shaped my perspective differently than what your perspective is. And that's okay, but I bring something different to the conversation. And the second you recognize that and calmly and effectively are able to communicate those things, it no longer becomes a situation of push come to shove, our feelings are involved, and that's what's going to drive the conversation. It becomes a lot more of a conversation of understanding and willingness, because we all want to be there for people. But when we understand we're not showing up and it doesn't make the most sense for either of us, and we're able to take out the emotion that drives hard conversation, it can be a very enlightening conversation for both parties. And then on the aspect to answer your other question of, on the more professional side, it kind of also goes with what I just answered personally. You have to be as a leader, as an entrepreneur, you might be the one-man show. You might be that solo entrepreneur. Your business is run, operated day to day by you. Okay. And I am like one of those people. I have partners. I've partnered with production companies, this and that. But my clients, they get me. They don't get an assistant. I answer every email. So if that means I have to go longer in my days to get back to everyone, I answer all those things. When I partner with a production company, I don't get any of their services. They're just getting me the way they need and their clients need. But from a personal aspect of that, one thing I've always been very conscious of since starting my business, and it was a journey that, again, while I was transitioning from like corporate to really starting my business, was a transition. I don't want to say I'm perfect or did it seamlessly. It was a transition, but telling people, instead of when I worked in professional sports, I'd work that 14-hour day, get home, and then if people were going out, I'd be like, okay, I'll be there. And I'm yawning at, the bar because they asked me to show up and I'm showing up. Well, I'm tired and I got to be up in 6 hours to go do this again. But like, I needed to do that. Now I'm going, okay, how important is this for you, and how important is this for me to do personally? How do I need to show up today? And saying to individuals, like I've had conversation with friends and I go, listen, I'm willing to go to this. I can only probably go for half of it. Or if I go, just know like I'm going to be working at the same time. So it might not be the best situation. This is more time sensitive. Can, we do lunch? Or saying, I can travel and I will block off this time to go do a family event because it really is important. Yeah. This needs my priority. This is where I need to show up, and go, how do I need to show up? Again, that question of how do you need to show up for others, but saying, okay, well, I understand you might need me to show up in this way, but just know, on this 3-day trip, I might have to take a phone call, or I might have to do this. And then professionally as well, tell others where your bandwidth lays. If a deadline is set for tomorrow and you go, there's no way I'm getting that to tomorrow, actually have the transparent conversation of saying, that's not going to get done by tomorrow. I could get it to you by the end of the week with the expectation in your head you'll maybe deliver a day early. But it's saying to potential clients, this is what I think you're looking for. This is what I could provide. Yes. So that the expectation is met, and the transparency of how communications are met. And I think that really drives in, as well as, and this goes for both sides of things, the empathy aspect and understanding and realizing, especially in business, people aren't just the money they put in front of you. There's a lot of things. Yeah. So build those relationships and take the time to understand. One thing I do with my clients is I ask them, like, what's the most beneficial way, when I do my weekly touch base, is that text message? Like, do you want a quick call? Is it better for you, instead of emailing back and forth throughout the week, if you have a question, you just text me, call me. And the second I ask that question, it's not because you will then have access to me 24 hours a day. Then it's not that at all. It's the essence of, okay, well, we are both going to get better results if I show up and get you this information the most effective way for you. And so a lot of people say email. I do have some clients that go, listen, do the weekly email, but if I have a question, like, I'll just send you a text, or I might approve it via text during these times. So just be on the lookout, because I will be traveling for work. So it's going to pop up on my phone, and it's easier for me just to go, yeah, that's approved. No, that's not, in a quick text, or ask that question. And I'm like, that's fine. But it's having those transparent moments of what is okay on both ends, and going, I hear you, and and I think a big thing, and now I'm going down the rabbit hole, I know, Liz, but
good. It's good. This is so good. So many wonderful nuggets. This is amazing. So yeah, no, go ahead.
It's the idea that you need to validate what someone else is, what they've been through and their feelings on it. You don't have to agree. Let me emphasize that.
Yes.
There has been times in my life I'm like, I hear you. And I think you need to actually say, I hear what you're saying. Yes. I am hearing it. I am absorbing it. And then you could go, but I don't agree with you.
Yes.
I hear you. I don't have to agree with that statement. And I think the other aspect of it is, and I can personally say this, I don't want to speak for everyone, as someone who's been through traumas in their life, things that have really shaped who they are.
Yes.
When someone gives me the excuse of, well, I was the stroke victim, and I'm literally just making this up out of thin air, so I just want to emphasize, I was the stroke victim, so all my decisions, like, I can say what I want, I can think what I want, even though, like, all their medical care shows, like, that they're normal after their stroke. Any bad decisions they make, they want to then easily be able to turn it to the stroke, so then they don't have to take accountability. Absolutely. Now it goes where I look at it and go, yeah, you're the stroke victim, and you've worked towards bettering yourself. Right. So I understand that some of these decisions could have been driven by effects you had after your stroke, could have shaped you. But I also need to hold you accountable for the words you decided to use.
Yes, the choice.
And I think that's a big thing as well. And for me, and the reason I prefaced this in the beginning was, it's the idea that sometimes people who go through traumas, and I'm saying this in a positive way, because I think this is a positive, are easier to hold people, have empathy, but hold people accountable than others. Because and those are individuals who've gone through trauma, who've actually worked through the trauma.
Right. That's important.
And I think that is because we've actually put in the work. We know the beauty that lies on the other side. Yes. And so we go, why would you want to sit in the mud? Why would you want this? And we can see the beautiful light that's on the other side and the beautiful path you can build. So let's actually get you there.
Yes. Yes. You have, Olivia, I'm telling you, you have given me goosebumps all over, because what you have given has been such powerful, rich information on what it takes to transform that trauma. Yes, it happened. What happened to you was not your fault. But we talk about recovery being your responsibility. You just laid out the blueprint of what that looks like, and the freedom that we achieve when we go through the recovery, and our person meets our purpose, and then you can start walking full out. You can have that freedom to say, understand, like you said, have a ear to hear what the other person is saying, and really hear them, not just listening to, it's your turn to jump in and talk, but to actually, like I said here, and I actually listened and absorbed what you were saying, because it makes so much sense about having transparent conversations with people. And it's okay to stand in your truth on what you believe. It's okay to disagree, respectfully disagree with someone. But I love when you went back to the conversation that you had with your friend, and because you were showing up the way that you thought you were there. Like, what are you saying? And like you said, you could have gotten mad and said, wait a minute, I'm here, I'm sacrificing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But you didn't. You sat back in your healed, recovered self and said, let me hear what she's saying. And wait a minute, I'm not showing up for how she needs me. I'm not giving her what she needs in her love language. I'm showing up the way I think, what I think. And I think that's so important, that we hear what the other person is saying and that we're able to express it. And that's what the Get Trauma Informed movement and awareness is all about. Because as someone that has went through trauma, you have to be able to educate the people around you, because they just don't know sometimes. It's not that they're being mean or they're trying to step on your foot or they're trying to re-traumatize. They are just operating in their own frame of reference. They don't have something else to think about or to act on. So I think everything that you said was so powerful, because it helps to understand and reinforce why it's so important for all of us to get trauma informed. So I thank you so much for that. And I know we have to wrap up, but you have been such an amazing, I want to say, umbrella of wisdom, because it just came out from all different angles, and you epitomize the achieving success. I thank you so much for that. And before we go, so you already said it in a way, and I'm just going to wrap it up and sum it up. What would you say to someone that is faced with trauma?
I could say, it looks like you're in the eye of the storm today, and you are in the eye of the storm today, but that does not mean you can't go through the storm. So think about how you can go through the storm, and whether that's a small step every day, a big leap, but know that there is that sun on the outside of the eye of the storm. So how can you work towards the sun?
Wonderful. Once again, I thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy and your presence. And I thank you for showing up in this world as such an amazing individual, such an amazing leader. I mean, I could go on with your titles, but I so appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.